everybody. Welcome to the February 22nd, 2021 Troy City Council meeting. I will call the meeting to order and ask Ms. Dixon for the roll call, please.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up on the agenda is certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a service commendation for Recreation Director Elaine Bowe, who is retiring. I believe Elaine is here with us tonight. Are you here, Elaine? There she is. All right, well, I have this wonderful commendation. I'd like to read it into the record. And these are hard to do virtually, because otherwise we'd be there in City Hall and we'd probably take a picture with you and give you a hug and do all the things that you would normally get to do in this kind of situation. So know that all that sentiment is coming from us tonight, Elaine, and this is a hard one for all of us, and I'm sure it's not easy for you either. But I'm gonna go ahead and read this into the record. This is a service commendation for Recreation Director Elaine Bowe. Whereas Elaine Bowe began her employment with the City of Troy on January 6, 1992 as a recreation supervisor with Troy's Parks and Recreation Department. Prior to Troy, Elaine worked as a playground supervisor with Woodhaven Parks and Recreation, recreation coordinator for the Downtown Recreation Commission in Algonac, and youth coordinator for West Bloomfield Parks and Recreation. And whereas as a Troy recreation supervisor, Elaine organized and administered enrichment classes, special events, summer day camps, babysitting service, ski program, year-round preschool, tennis and dance programs. She was responsible for a program budget of $750,000, preparing and maintaining records, reports, and promotional materials, and hiring, training, and supervising 45 part-time or seasonal employees and up to 100 volunteers. And whereas in 2000 through 2011, Elaine also worked as a building supervisor for the community center, supervising the full-time custodial and front desk staff, processing permits and handling patron concerns in addition to her programming responsibilities. She was one of the recreation team members responsible for the design and construction of the 130,000 square foot community center. And whereas in 2002, Elaine became responsible for designing the quarterly Recreation Department magazine and marketing the department. In 2011, Elaine took on the responsibility for organizing, administering, and marketing all fitness programs, personal trainers, massage therapists, and fitness center pass sales. And whereas on December 21st, 2013, Elaine became the City of Troy's Recreation Director, working tirelessly with her staff to provide outstanding recreation programs, classes, events, and services to the Troy community. Some of Elaine's major accomplishments include securing the DMC agreement in 2017 to provide a clinic within the Troy Community Center, securing long-term contracts with the Troy Racquet Club, Indigo Golf, and Troy Nature Society, successfully launching the dog park memberships, coordinated with IT, DPW, and finance departments, and meeting budget expectations every year with the exception of COVID in 2020. And whereas Elaine received her Bachelor of Arts degree in Parks and Recreation Administration with a concentration in community recreation from Central Michigan University, during her career, Elaine served as a member of the Michigan Recreation and Parks Association for many years, and served as board member from 1998 to 2000. And whereas Elaine retired from the City of Troy on March 5th, 2021, hasn't actually happened yet, where she will retire on March 5th, 2021, after 29 years of dedicated service and the utmost respect from the Troy employees, community center patrons, and countless members of Michigan Recreation and Parks Association. And whereas Elaine will now enjoy more time with her husband Keith, buried 31 years on November 11th, daughter Sarah, and son Greg, as well as traveling, spending time up north on the water, finishing scrapbooking projects, and long walks with Tucker, their golden retriever. Now, therefore, be it known that the mayor and the city council of the City of Troy take this opportunity to express their appreciation to Recreation Director Elaine Bowe for her professionalism and her many contributions to the Troy Recreation Department for the betterment of the community. And be it further known that the mayor and the city council of the City of Troy, city management, and the citizens of the City of Troy extends wishes of prosperity, good health, and lots of happiness to Elaine during her well-deserved retirement years. This proclamation is presented this 22nd day of February 2021. And I'm honored and proud to be able to read it into the record for you, Elaine. And I just want to start with a round of applause for you. Thank you so much. And I know that you're here, and I'd love it if you'd say a few words for us.
Yeah, I did write down a couple of things. Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you to you and the current city management for all of your support and letting me serve your community over the last 29 years. I've thoroughly enjoyed my job, minus a couple of years in between, but I'm not going to digress. I did want to thank my parents, my husband, and my kids for their support and understanding when I was at work instead of with them or at their extracurricular events. Sorry. I really like the team that we have at the recreation department. I worked with a lot of great leaders and coworkers over my term there. And rest assured, I'm leaving behind a great team that will continue to offer new and quality programs for the Troy community. Thank you.
Elaine, thank you. And you mentioned it briefly, but obviously my tenure with you over the past 5 years or so, there has been some rocky times, and we've watched you handle them with professionalism and do your best for the citizens of this city and work really hard to maintain the good positive attitude that you brought to the recreation department and for the Troy Community Center. So thank you for that. I mean, from a personal standpoint, just for me, and I know others on council feel the same way, but I know you've worked really, really hard to maintain a level of professionalism and care that wasn't always easy. So I love that you made it through those times, and you're leaving now on a higher note and better times. That says a lot about your character and your personality and your commitment to the city. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for that. And I'm sure you'll come back and visit us when we're allowed to see each other again in person. I hope to see you at the Aquatic Center getting some sun sometime maybe in the next season or something. That'd be nice. That'd
be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for those words. That means a lot.
I know it's been hard, Elaine. So thank you. Appreciate it very, very much. And you. God bless you. I don't like when people retire. I just got to tell you, this is not, we've got, I know you always leave us in good hands when you go, but it's not easy to have to say goodbye to somebody who's been around for such a long time and worked really hard on behalf of the city. So we hate to see that, but we really do wish you the best. Elaine, Edna, do you want to go ahead and say something?
I did. Elaine, you've had quite the career here, and when you're in the rec department, you're right up front with residents. You know what they want, you hear what they don't like, and sometimes it can be a really uncomfortable position to be in, especially when you want to provide the services that we just don't have the budget for. But you've always been willing to talk with residents and hear them out and do whatever you can for them. And your success is evident by the rec department's success. And you think about how much the department has expanded while you've been there. And especially since you've been director, despite budget cuts, despite a recession and a pandemic, you're still delivering services and you're still getting great feedback on what you can provide. And so you've made such a phenomenal impact on the department. You know, you're leaving it into your successors. You're leaving your successor with a really great place to be at. On a personal level, there are few people that have the integrity that you do and the fortitude to withstand some of the things that you've withstood. And I want you to know how much I appreciate you and what you stood for, and that you really are a model of behavior to anyone that's worked with you or has known you. And I will miss you terribly, but I'm so happy that you can spend many decades of retirement with your family, and finishing all the scrapbooking that you've never quite finished. You've earned it, and you will be missed, but couldn't be happier for someone to enter retirement with such great plans.
Well said, Councilmember. Councilmember Hoderick.
Elaine, I feel like we go back so far. And, you know, I'm going to miss you in the mix. Everything that Mayor Baker and Councilwoman Abraham, you know, your integrity and how much you cared. And you have the heart of a true public servant. And your emphasis happened to be Parks and Rec. And our community has really benefited from you. You can leave this career feeling proud of what you contributed. And please, please enjoy your time. Maybe I could call you sometime and take a walk with Tucker too. And really, thank you. I hate these goodbyes, especially, you know, I realized I first hardly interacted with you when my kids were little and the community center had opened brand new and all the excitement there. And we've enjoyed so many programs and residents. You know, I think about all the different people you've touched through your efforts there. That is an amazing career. So please go with your head held high. Be proud of everything you contributed here. And we really appreciate you and wish you the best.
Wow.
Thanks, everybody.
Elaine, again, thank you. Personal character means a lot. So you've got great character and great integrity, as they've said. So thank you. Go give your family a hug. Go get a hug from somebody that you can hug that's safe in your bubble. That's what you, because we can't give it to you here. That's the, thank you. All right. Bye, Elaine. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. There are no carryover items this evening. We do have one public hearing this evening. E1 is Community Development Block Grant CDBG 2021 funds. It's a public hearing. I don't have my gavel, but I'll open the public hearing with a knock on my desk, and I see Cindy Stewart here to present this. Go ahead, Cindy.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's my pleasure once again to present the 2021 CDBG Block Grants. The county this year has given us the total of $178,000, 147. 30% of that can be used for a public service, which will be $53,444, which we will use for yard assistance. And the remaining $124,703 will be used to finish the project at Firefighters Park. Their DPW is coordinating an asphalt pathway from the parking lot to the soccer fields, making it wheelchair accessible so people can go and watch their children or grandchildren or husbands or wives play soccer there. And we hope that City Council will approve that. Our application is due March 5th. And part of the application process is a public hearing from City Council.
Thank you, Cindy. Good to see you on the screen. It's been a long time that you've been in one of our meetings, I feel like. I know you're always around, but to have you here, it's almost like old times, except you would have just taken a picture with Elaine of us with the camera. That's what was missing from that scene. But
I would have.
Any questions for Cindy on that issue? Not seeing any hands. City Clerk Dixon, it's a public hearing. Was there any public comment specifically marked for this public hearing?
Yes, Mayor. We do have one email from for public comment for this hearing. It's from Patricia Hoskins of Haven. And she says, I'm writing this email on behalf of Haven in regards to the CDBG funds for 2021-2022. In October of 2020, Haven sent you the attached letter requesting CDBG funds from your community. I want to begin by thanking the City of Troy for all of the help and support that you have given Haven in the past. As you know, Haven is an agency that works with the issues of intimate partner violence and sexual assault. Last year, we were able to help 70 survivors from the Troy community. Our services enable survivors to receive free service and support to heal from the injustice of sexual assault and intimate partner violence. Most people know we provide emergency shelter to those feeling deadly situations, but we do so much more to help survivors heal from individual and group counseling, legal advocacy, PPO assistance, and safe, compassionate forensic exams. Our crisis and support line offer crisis intervention, resources, and support for concerned individuals and victims 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. To end the cycle of violence, we must set our survivors up for success, and your support will help us do that. However, we understand that you, like us, have limited resources with unlimited needs in your community. Thank you so much for your time. All of us at Haven look forward to strengthening our relationship with the City of Troy. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am more than happy to discuss this or any topic you may want to address.
Okay, thank you, City Clerk Dixon. I see both Cindy and Mark raising their hands. I think I know what they're both going to say. Mark, do you have a preference? Do you want Cindy to answer, or do you want to go ahead and speak to that?
Go ahead, Cindy.
Unfortunately, we spend all 30% of our money on our senior citizens, our low-income seniors and persons with disabilities, taking care of their yards, and then we do snow removal. So it's my understanding we have always had, the police department has put Haven in their budget, which helps them out.
Very good. That was I know we're supporters of Haven, and we love what they do for our community and others and other communities around it. But it is my understanding that it's our police department budget that is what usually goes to that. It's not the CDBG funds. So I'm sure someone will communicate that back to Haven. I think if they haven't already, I would appreciate that. And there's no other public comment, City Clerk Dixon, that came in even after 4 o'clock, because I'm certain. Okay, just making sure. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask if someone would like to move the resolution. Oh, I'll jump up at once. Don't make me move it. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move E1 Community Development Block Grant CDBG 2021 funds public hearing as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve E1, the Community Development Block Grant CDBG 2021 funds as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion on this item? I'll just thank Cindy for her hard work with the services for the seniors and for the people with disabilities, and also to Kurt and the DPW for the work being done now at Firefighters Park. I think that's funds well used on both aspects there. So the vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Cindy. That concludes public hearings this evening. Next up on the agenda is public comment. As a reminder, while we're meeting virtually, public comment can be submitted via email to publiccomment@troymi.gov or via voicemail to 248-524-3302. Both emails and voicemail messages will be cut off at 3 minutes, as you would if you were live and in person. And I'll send it back over to you, City Clerk Dixon, to see if there's any public comments submitted this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 voicemails tonight.
My name is Steve. I live in 3862 Colleen Drive. It is between 18 and a half and west of the Quander. We have been living here in this house for the last 13, 14 years. And every winter we have a problem with the snow. We have a business to run. We cannot get to a business. Like this morning, my wife, she came out of the street and stuck there. We have to pull their car out. I'm sitting home without going to work. My kids, they cannot go to work. And we are around 25 houses here, new houses, and we pay over $250,000 tax a year. And at the same time, we cannot go to work to pay the tax. I do not think it is fair. Everybody, it is open to work on the street. Besides us, people, they go back and forth. But in our city, either you have to have a truck or you have to have a van. Unfortunately, I don't have a truck or van. I have a regular car to go to work, and I'm stuck home every winter like that. Could you please do something to clean the street in the same day they clean the Dennis and they clean other street? Thank you very much, and have a good day. And yes, hi, good afternoon. My name is
Sorry.
yes, hi, good afternoon. My name is
I think, I'm sorry, I apologize. Let me just, I copied the wrong file. Let me grab the other one.
No problem. Why don't we take this moment for response to that specific one? I know there's a report regarding snow removal in this week's agenda. I wasn't sure if there was contact information as part of that voicemail, and if someone has already reached out to that resident, or if there's a way that we can have that information to reach out. City Manager Miller?
Mayor, I believe they left a phone number, and I'll call them and talk with them. We haven't talked as of yet.
Okay. I tried to buy you a little time, Aileen. Did it?
Sorry.
It's okay.
In almost a year, this is the first time this has happened, so.
I know, it's pretty impressive. So. If we all sit really still, people at home will think we've frozen.
So embarrassing. Okay, almost got it.
No problem. As a reminder, as long as we're meeting virtually, you can submit public comment by email to publiccomment@troymi.gov or via voicemail to 248-524-3302.
yes, hi, good afternoon. My name is Steve.
Sorry.
We really need to do something about that snow. He keeps calling.
Now it's like, now I'm getting like flustered, so.
No worries.
So embarrassing.
Don't worry about it. You do an excellent job. So.
Okay, now I think I have it.
Hi, my name is Arena Koka. I've been a resident of Troy for the past 19 years, and I'm currently a sophomore at Wayne State University. I'm calling today to talk about a community outreach project that my peers and I have been working on throughout quarantine. We have already reached out to individual council members via email, but received no response. So I'm hoping that today I can get a response from the council regarding my proposal. Our project is focused on providing a 24/7 accessible fridge to everyone in our community. This idea for a community fridge came to when we discovered similar projects around the country. Through some light research, we also learned that the poverty rate in our own city of Troy for those part-time employed is 5.47%, and for those unemployed, it's 10.15%. We all know how much this pandemic has affected the livelihood of most, and we think our project can sincerely help those in need within our own community. We already have a fridge donation and 20 plus community members ready to help. All we need now is a location with consistent electricity. We think right outside of the public library or community center may be a perfect location for our community fridge. These locations are central and easy accessible for all community members. While we know that 24/7 electricity for a fridge averages about $200 a year, we are willing to fundraise and pay that money ourselves if it will help those in need in our community. However, after going through the 2021 adopted budget, we found that the city of Troy has an excess revenue of $4.5 million, so we don't think money should really be an issue. Our team of volunteers is ready to work hard on keeping the fridge clean, stocked, and COVID safe at all times. We just need your help figuring out the perfect location for it. We hope you seriously consider our proposal and are able to meet with us via Zoom or something other as soon as possible to further discuss our project. Thank you for your time and attention from me and my entire team. We hope to hear from you soon. You can reach us at 248-764-3519 or shoot me an email at orena43@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
And that is all the public comment.
That concludes those who have participated in our virtual public comment, either via voicemail 248-524-3302 or email public comment at troymi.gov. Now's an opportunity for council members or city management to respond to anything they heard. I'll call on Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Arena, for your message. I have to admit, I don't recall getting that email from you. I don't remember. Maybe it either slipped through or I check them pretty regularly, so I don't remember hearing that. And so this is the first time I've heard of this idea, but it sounds like a great idea to me. So if council agrees, I'd like to look into if this is something we can do. Because yes, Troy is considered a prosperous community, but there is about a 4 to 5% poverty rate throughout the city, and there are people that need a little help. And this seems like could very well be, with their help, a no-brainer. So I'm very interested.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Anybody else? City Manager Miller, are you unmuted? Or go ahead, Mark, and then Edna. Or Edna, then Mark. Whatever. Go ahead, Edna. How about that?
I was going to say something similar to what Councilmember Hamilton said. I don't recall getting any email with a proposal, so I'm curious if it went to staff instead. I mean, it's hard to say whether I would be supportive of a proposal I haven't seen. So maybe just looking for a little bit more information on what this would entail. No doubt our city manager and our city attorney would also need to weigh in, because of course there would be liabilities with anything that's on public property. So interested in hearing more, but I can't, commit beyond that. But certainly it's an intriguing idea.
Hey, Mark, before you say anything, I did get that email and just realized that I didn't respond to it because I had to go out of town, and it came right as I was leaving. So I apologize for not responding to that email yet, but I do remember getting it because when I heard her talk about it, I said, wait a minute, this sounds very familiar to me. So my apologies for not responding to that email. But City Manager Miller, I saw you unmute as well. And I'm interested in it. Again, there's always a lot of moving parts. What sounds easy in one respect, it can be completely complicated from a municipal government standpoint. So we'd obviously have to figure all that out. And go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. And Mayor, can you send that email to me?
I will after the meeting, because I'm not allowed to use my email during meetings. So I will after.
There definitely we'll contact these folks, and there might be some other options besides the city providing the space. We'll talk to some of the other local community groups, nonprofits that it's more of their core mission, but maybe we can help make a connection, and I'm sure Cindy can help us do that.
Good point. Anyone else in response to public comment this evening? All right, thank you. There are no postponed items this evening. We move on to regular business. I do have a mayoral appointment this evening. I'd like to move the appointment to the Board of Review of Frank Strahl for the term expiring January 31st, 2024.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that the mayor of the city of Troy appoints Frank Strahl to the Board of Review for the term expiring January 31st, 2024. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes. Motion carries, and we thank Mr. Strahl for his continued service on the Board of Review. That concludes mayoral appointments this evening. We move on to city council appointments, so we do have some. I'll hand it over to Mayor Pro Tem Brooks for those Liquor Advisory Committee appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just pull it up really quickly here. I move to appoint. I had it here a second ago. I move to appoint Dave to the Liquor Advisory Committee, David Ashland, Ann Comiskey, and Max Ehlert for term expiring January 31st, 2024.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that the Troy City Council appoints to the Liquor Advisory Committee David Ashland, Ann Comiskey, and Max Ehlert for the terms expiring January 31st, 2024. Any discussion? I actually have a question for City Attorney Bloom. It dawned on me when I saw these in the agenda as a reminder, we haven't had any liquor violations, it feels like, in a couple of years at this point, or any hearings specifically. I'm not sure if that's partially COVID related or if it's just we've got such compliant businesses through all of this that there's been no issues. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that briefly.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do expect that there, unfortunately, there was at least one violation, and so we do expect that you will be seeing that in the near future. But again, this year is a lot different because of COVID.
Okay. Very good, thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Motion carries, and thank you to those three for continuing to serve as well. That concludes City Council appointments this evening. We move on to I2, Board and Committee nominations. I don't have any mayoral nominations this evening, so I will hand it over to Mayor Pro Tem Brooks for City Council nominations.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to nominate to the Election Committee, renominate Ray Watts and nominate Steven Sadler for the term expiring January 31st, 2022.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that we nominate Ray Watts and Steven Sadler to the Election Commission for the terms expiring January 31st, 2022. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. Do you have additional nominations this evening, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
No.
Okay, that concludes nominations for boards and committees from City Council. There's no closed session requested this evening. So next up is I4, 2021 City Council meeting schedule, and that will be introduced by Assistant City Manager Robert J. Bruner. Take it away, Bob.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here to talk about the meeting schedule once again. It's been several months, but you had scheduled this special meeting for personnel evaluations of the city attorney and city manager on Tuesday, the 23rd. Initially, I later discovered that the Planning Commission is meeting at 7 o'clock that night, and I'm proposing moving the meeting to Wednesday, March 24th. However, there is a Animal Control Board of Appeals meeting that night at 7 o'clock. The good news is we can actually do 2 meetings in one night because the special meeting is scheduled to begin at 6. It's anticipated that the meeting would be called to order and go into closed session so that city staff would then be able to stream the 7 o'clock meeting. So regardless of whether the meeting's held on Tuesday or Wednesday, we can accommodate it. I believe somebody had contacted me regarding having a preference for that Wednesday date, but Thursday the 25th would also be an option. There's no conflict scheduled. So that's really what we're here to do tonight, is to kind of tighten up the schedule a little bit there.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, so I have a question for you. Are you saying we don't need to move it because we'll be in closed session theoretically with regardless of Planning Commission meeting or Animal Control Board? So we have the option of either keeping it for that Tuesday or moving it to the Wednesday or Thursday. Is that, but the resolution as printed is for Wednesday to change it, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, but you can modify that. You are correct in that we can accommodate it on either of those Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday that week.
Is there a preference from city staff? Is it easier to, is anybody who, Mark or Lori, would you need to be at Planning Commission for anything that night or Tuesday night, or is there an issue? I guess it's a curveball. Trying to figure out. Go ahead, City Attorney Blue.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We will accommodate the schedule of council. And again, I think the only thing that will need to be televised would just be the call of the meeting and then the resolution and public comment beforehand. So it would very likely be done before the 7 o'clock meeting.
All right, so fellow council members.
Mayor?
Mark, yeah, sorry.
Just really quick, I am available, but Thursday I have 8 hours of interest-based bargaining training, and I have a feeling that's gonna be a little taxing. So I would prefer not to do it on Thursday, but I still could. But I'm available those other dates.
I'm told Thursday's not an option. Sorry about that.
Oh, never mind then. I apologize.
It's bad for me too. So perfect. Thursday's off the table, folks. There we go. We're back to Tuesday as is, or Wednesday for fun. We do have council on that Monday. So council member preferences. I'm happy to, we take no action and it stays on Tuesday, or we take action and move it to Wednesday, I guess is the issue. Councilmember Hamilton, you've unmuted. It's a telltale sign.
Yeah, I'm indifferent, so I'm fine with either. So whatever, if any council member has something on either day, speak up, because I'm fine with leaving it. That's probably the simplest way, but I'm open to either.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-4 2021 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda.
Support.
So moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga, that we approve I-4 2021 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda, which would mean moving that meeting for personnel evaluations to Wednesday at 6 p.m. That's on the table. Any just further discussion? All right.
Just to confirm, sorry, Mayor, just to confirm, it'll be on Wednesday at 6.
If we vote to approve it, coming up momentarily. Yes.
I just wanted to confirm. Okay. Thanks.
All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Kringa.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. We will move that to the Wednesday. Appreciate that, Bob. Also appreciate the hoops that city staff's having to go through to do multiple meetings in one night, and recognizing it's just a different experience, but we're thankful for all that they're doing. Mr. Savadan has popped on my screen. That means I-5 is up. Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Award, Community Planning and Consulting Services. That will be introduced by our Community Development Director, Brent Savadan, and we'll be joined by Principal Planner Ben Carlisle from Carlisle Wortman. Thanks, Ben, as well. I'll hand it over to you, Brent. I assume you'll start.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will start. Thank you, Steve. I started to prepare for the meeting this evening, and I wasn't really planning on having a PowerPoint presentation, but I wanted to describe the relationship we've had with Carlisle Wortman over the years. And the more I started to write down, the more I realized that it was a very rich history, and it was very closely tied to a lot of the improvements that you've seen in the city, and very closely tied to the careers of both myself and Mark Miller. So I thought it warranted a quick PowerPoint presentation. So Steve, I'll let you know when I need the next slide. So I gave it a really catchy title of the City of Troy and Carlisle Wortman Associates Partnership, A Brief History. Next slide. So in 2000, the planning department hired now city manager Mark Miller as principal planner. Next slide. And a year later, in 2001, we entered into an agreement, contractual agreement with Carlisle Wortman Associates. They were a multidisciplined consulting firm specializing primarily in planning, but they also had landscape architects, and now they have building inspection. Their main office was in Ann Arbor, and they had about 50 municipal clients. And we did a best value search for the firm, and we hired Carlisle Wortman. Next slide, please. The principal point of contact with Carlisle Wortman was Richard Carlisle, Dick Carlisle. He was the day-to-day representative, and we used him for help with complicated projects like PUDs. He also provided assistance to the DDA, and he also assisted Automation Alley. They extended the life of the Smart Zone for 15 years a few years ago. We use them for a lot of different tasks. Next slide, please. In 2002, I was hired as principal planner after Mark Miller was promoted to planning director. So our relationship with Carlisle Wortman is longer than the relationship that I have had with the city of Troy, which is going on 19 years. Next slide. In 2006, Carlisle Wortman Associates assisted with the Big Beaver Corridor study that has helped to guide development along the Big Beaver Corridor. It is approaching 15 years old now, and it is still relevant today, and a lot of the policy that was laid out in this document has been implemented over the last 15 years. Next slide. In 2008, we used the services of Carlisle Wortman to assist us in adopting the City of Troy Master Plan. It was the first comprehensively updated master plan in over 30 years. Next slide. Following the master plan adoption, obviously the Great Recession impacted the city and continues to impact the city. In 2010, we had a planning department staff of 5, and it was reduced to 2 full-time employees. And what we did to compensate for that significant loss in employees was utilize Carlisle Wortman's services. They provided regular office hours. And in 2010, we also established an escrow fee. And basically what that means is when we have development applications, they submit a fee for the application itself, and they also submit escrow fees that cover the cost that Carlisle Wortman charges us when they review development applications. And the reason for that is the cost of the review is paid directly by the developer and not by the Troy taxpayer. So it is a best management practice. Next slide, please. In 2011, Carlisle Wortman Associates assisted in a comprehensive update to our zoning ordinance. It was the first comprehensive update to that document in decades. Next slide. 2012, Ben Carlisle was appointed the representative from Carlisle Wortman, who provided us with regular office hours. Prior to COVID, he was in the office every Tuesday, attended every planning commission, and participated in pre-application meetings and a number of the tasks that we perform on a daily basis. Next slide. 2016, we amended the City of Troy master plan. Next slide. And 2020, this is really significant. Dick Carlisle was recognized as a fellow with the American Institute of Certified Planners. It's a very significant, very prestigious award. It's basically national recognition for his contribution to the field of planning, and it's basically like being elected to the Planning Hall of Fame. Next slide, please. In 2002, when Mark's laughing, in 2002, when I first met Mark and first talked to Dick, and Mark and I met with him in a meeting, and we were joking that there's a saying out there that in the planning field that eventually you end up hating your consultant. And I don't know who came up with that, but it's just this kind of this funny quote that's out there. And I'm here to tell you that this is not a true quote. In August of 2021, it will be 20 years of a relationship with Carlisle Wortman Associates. They provided outstanding service to us over those nearly 20 years. And I will refute this saying. Next slide, please. Which brings us to 2021. We have set up a best value practice to seek a consultant to provide community planning and consultant services. We're looking to award a contract for 3 years with an option to renew for 2 additional years. We went out to bid. We got 2 respondents. One of the respondents did not pass the pass-fail, and we are left with one firm standing. It is Carlisle Wortman Associates, and I'm here to recommend the approval of a 3-year contract with Carlisle Wortman Associates, and I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Savadon. Appreciate that trip down memory lane and good information. It's a good reminder of where the relationship and the value of that relationship. Anybody have any questions? I will say there was a late submittal regarding some information as it pertains to the master plan itself. I'm assuming Ben might speak to that shortly. So if we don't want to ask him, he looks like maybe not. I saw him looking up at the camera. No, but any questions specific to what Mr. Savadon had just talked about, or what the contract itself is? I'll start with a question. I'm City Attorney Bloom. I know the answer to this, but checks out from your perspective, obviously, and just want to make sure everything's up to speed from a legal standpoint for the city.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have had an opportunity to look at the contract, and it is, of course, subject to final approval, but I do not see any major hurdles with this contract.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember, sorry, you guys are really small on my screen. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Brent, for your presentation. I just had just for the history of the planning department, I just had a question that just popped in my head. How did the planning department look before the recession when there was 5 employees? How did the process go along, and how is that different to what we experience now with the consultant? I'm just kind of curious. I'm always curious of how Troy looked pre-Great Recession compared to now, because those were different times and we had inflation adjusted at 30% higher funding level. But I'm just curious what that was like versus during the recession and then after and now. How would you kind of describe the experience and the cuts we had to make and where we're at now?
I saw City Manager Miller raising his hand, so I'll defer to him initially.
Sure.
Yeah, initially, Greg, I'll have you take over once you become planning director. So I was hired when I was hired in 2000, the intent was for me to have the then city manager, John Zerlag, be assured that I was confident that I could become the planning director. And I was replacing longtime planning director Larry Kiesling, who I think worked 36 years, I believe. And at the same time, outside of my realm, city manager Zerlag worked on the bid process that initially hired Carlisle Wortman. So our department was made up of a planning director, a principal planner, 2 staff planners, and a secretary. And the one thing that's happened in the transition since I was there is we transitioned from paper maps to digital maps. And we actually had someone's job who was to update all the maps, all the lot splits, and the zoning map. And so then when the Great Recession hit, John Zerlag recognized that I had some managerial promise in some of the things we were doing in the planning department. And we were able then I moved up to the city manager's office and Brent had taken over. And we started doing something which we do in engineering also, and to a certain degree in building, is we have hybrid departments where you use a small base of staff, which I might argue planning is a little too small, and then use consultants. And go ahead, Brent, you can explain what we do now and currently.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit during the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, that we utilize consultants to assist us with the day-to-day operations. But one of the things that's in the Q&A that went out today is in 2008, we hired a firm out of San Diego called Zucker Systems. And what Zucker Systems did is they looked at the way that we processed applications. They did a deep dive into how all the various departments processed applications. They came up with a list of, I think it was 102 recommendations for best management practices. And what we did is we implemented basically all the ones that applied to planning. And the reason that was really important was because they were efficiencies. They helped us become lean and mean and to function in an efficient manner. So when we downsized from 5 full-time employees to 2, we had to be lean and mean. We had to utilize best management practices. So one of the things we did is we gravitated towards a paperless planning commission agenda, for example, and also electronic plan review. So we accept electronic site plan applications and other applications. We circulate them internally for review electronically, and that's a significant time saving and cost saving. So one of the reasons it's really valuable having Carlisle Wortman assist us is when we get busy with applications, they've got staff that they can hand off applications to assist Ben in their review. So they have to handle the ebbs and the flows because we just don't have the staff with 2 full-time people. Did I answer your question, Councilman Hamilton?
You did, thank you. Are there other municipalities that still use paper for everything, even today? I would guess yes, but I'm glad we don't.
So Ben Carlisle, as I indicated in my presentation, Carlisle Wortman has 50 municipal clients, and I saw Ben nodding his head when you asked your question.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you tonight. Yes, Councilman Hamilton, we actually now represent almost 80 communities in the state, and you'd be surprised there are a lot of communities that still use paper for a lot of theirs. So Troy really is ahead of the curve with the planning department and the best practices that Director Saudon and Mr. Miller have implemented over time. So it's really a leading edge, cutting edge in terms of advanced best practices.
Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Miller.
Just really quick, I want to give an example of that is that when we do a project with Carlisle Wortman, Alex in our IT department will send them the shape files from Ezra, and then Carlisle Wortman just digitally handles it from there. We used to maintain all those maps with a draftsman back in the day, but now the mapping is all mostly in IT and engineering now.
Any other questions? did we want to have the master plan update now before we move the resolution? From a process standpoint, is there issue with that? City Clerk Dixon or City Attorney Bloom, is that okay? It can be part of this presentation. I don't want to do things out of order.
I'm assuming, Mayor, that it's in response to questions that were asked about this item and generated by this item. So based on that, your Mayor, it's acceptable to handle it however you want.
Very good. Well, we did get a late submittal of a memo that had some information laid out that will be part of the public record. But since Ben's here and we've been talking a lot about the master plan, I'm just wondering if you could kind of give your elevator update as to where we are on that, and I'd be happy to listen. It came up at our last meeting, actually. I think Councilmember Hamilton may have asked, or somebody asked about it.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to update the council with regards to the status. I'll be perfectly honest. I apologize for getting this to you a little late. It came across my attention in the last couple of days. I tried to put something together very quickly for the council to respond to. And when when I was last before the council, when you approved the scope of the master plan, I believe it was in November of last year, late October of last year. And since that time, we've learned a lot with regards to COVID responses, as well as kind of timing of things. And one of our initial strategies, which was supposed to kick off here in March, was to start a very robust, more focus on online engagement and run that really from March into the summer and potentially into the fall. Since that time, obviously, things appear to be getting better and appear to hopefully loosen up with regards to regulations. And so with that, we have presented a slightly revised approach that we would like the council to consider with regards to engagement. We are fully and certainly capable of doing and continuing and starting that online engagement. We've already started kind of formulating the process of the strategy of how to do that. But in conversations with city administration and the planning commission, many folks felt that while online engagement is good and valuable, it's not as robust as what we really think we need in this community really needs, and that would be for more in-person and targeted engagement. So with that being said, and with the potential of things kind of changing here in the near future, we are offering kind of do a little bit of a slight change to the online engagement strategy moving forward, and doing some online stuff, not in the near time, but really kind of revamping it to allow for much more robust engagement this summer outdoors, as well as moving to the falls, as it appears that things with COVID are getting better and the vaccines are rolling out. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't start the engagement now and consistent with the original scope and timeline, but it would shift more of the engagement into the summer and the fall. One of the other reasons why we think it's important, and we didn't know this in October, we know it now, is the census data is actually been significantly delayed from what initially was being presented. Originally, the first round of data was supposed to come out in December 31st of 2020. That has since been delayed to late April, and we think that's going to be even further delayed into the summer. We don't think it's going to come out in April as initially anticipated at this moment. It's very difficult to do a robust engagement with the community without updated and accurate census data and data for us to work under. And so that would be another reason to consider pushing back some of the engagement to a little bit further into the year to allow for more analysis and information from that census data. So with that being said, we can certainly continue the path that we had originally kind of mapped out and scoped out in November, or we can take a little bit of pause, and I have listed 6 items that we could do in the near term between now and I would say July or June to keep the project moving forward, but again, backloading some of that more robust in-person engagement into the summer, into the fall. So Mr. Mayor, with that being said, I can walk through the 6 things that we think we could focus on in the near term, or I can be open for any questions that the council may have.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, any questions before we hear anything further from Ms. Carla? I appreciate that update, and I appreciate the ability to be flexible with what you think is best. I also, I guess I just want to, with the caveat that while things may appear to be getting better in a certain respect, and we're hopeful of a robust outdoor participatory engagement, I think based on what we've seen, we always need to be prepared to go back to more of an online if necessary, or recognize that even as we approach the summer months, I promise you there's going to be a lot of people in our city who are not going to be comfortable with getting out and doing something like this. And I want to make sure their voices are heard as well. So I'm assuming you've included that as part of your plan. Is that correct? I mean, is that something that you can, I know it's hard to plan. I get the difficulties with it. I just want to make sure that we cover all bases.
So we are right now doing 100% online engagement through, I believe, about 5 master plans right now. We are certainly capable of doing that. I would say it's the best we can do right now in terms of engagement in the current circumstances we're having. We can certainly be nimble and do a hybrid combination where we focus right now on getting online engagement, and then alter that if and when things get better. There's no reason we couldn't do that. But the reason why I brought up was that in discussions with the planning department and the planning commission and the city administration, it was felt that we should also look at updating our engagement to allow for more in-person, with things looking on the horizon, looking like they're getting a little bit better. So we can be certainly nimble and flexible. I just want to be fully transparent and open with this council that we will be and we should be nimble with regards to engagement, because things are changing week by week and month by month as we're going forward.
Okay, that's for sure. Councilmember Hamilton.
If go with Rebecca first, since I already spoke. I can follow up with my comments later.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Carranga. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a really kind of an obvious question is, how does this impact the timeline? I didn't get a chance to review the PowerPoint. I left it down with the pizza downstairs in the kitchen. How does it impact the timeline?
It really shouldn't impact the timeline much because we were actually supposed to start the engagement process really starting in March, and so we can still keep doing that moving forward. But it would allow, it may slow it down for more in-person based on how things move forward in the upcoming months. We can certainly, as we originally had scoped this out, we had an end date in September of this year. With that end game, most, if not all of the engagement would mostly be online, because by September, by July, August, we'd have to have the draft pretty much well written, and so wouldn't allow for much in-person engagement until that point. So we can keep the current schedule as is with mostly focus online, but we may have to extend it out a little bit if we want to do more in-person engagement. But as the scope was written and approved back in October, things were not looking very good, obviously, and so we focused pretty much entirely with online virtual engagement.
And Mayor, if I may share, thank you so much for that. I think if I just were to share my opinion is, I do like the idea of proceeding, even if it starts potentially in April, to start online and to assume online. And if we can incorporate the in-person, all the better. I know that there are numerous workplaces, including my own, that is based in Troy. We will not go back into the office until after Labor Day. And I think with that sort of attitude in mind, sometimes it's hard to get people out feeling comfortable to be able to meet in person if they're not still returning to their offices. So my preference would be to assume more virtual than not, but I love in person. And if there's a way to make that happen, then definitely find ways to sprinkle that in, but let the crux of it probably be virtual in many ways.
Before Councilmember Hamilton, first of all, Councilmember Chamberlain-Carranga, after Labor Day, that's shocking to me, but okay, I hadn't heard it. I've heard people coming back hopefully in the summer, but I hadn't heard anybody say after Labor Day yet, but that's fascinating. Ben, I guess a clarification question, are you needing us to modify the agreement that we had with you in order to change the scope, or are you just looking for our input now? I just wanted to be clear on that.
I wanted to use this as an opportunity to have this discussion with council with regards to engagement strategy moving forward. If the direction of the council is to proceed as is, we certainly can work. We will work off the existing scope. We do not need to modify the scope. And frankly, even if there are modifications to the scope, we can certainly work within the existing scope of work that we had originally approved back in November. So there's no need to make any changes. I think we were looking for an opportunity because we're back in front of you again. Things have changed since October. We just wanted some confirmation from the council with regard to engagement.
Okay, that makes sense then. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. This question might involve the city attorney too, but what are the legal requirements of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act for us to have action on this? And what level of action do we need to meet the 5-year city plan is to be reconsidered kind of thing? Is it just the discussion has to take place? Do we actually have to approve either the master plan as is or an amendment? What are the legal requirements there? And then if we find that by that deadline we're not quite ready, could we kind of interim approve it and then further amend it past the deadline? Or what is the legal requirement there? And then my other comment was just that the one thing I didn't see in what was presented was engaging with the DDA as well, because we just had a joint meeting with the DDA and we did discuss at that meeting that we'd like them to be involved with the planning process. I mean, they're a key component, and the members of that board and the businesses they represent are a key player in this. So I just want to make sure that they are involved as well.
Okay, but City Attorney Bloom, you want to go ahead and start with the first question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor. So the question is whether or not there are deadlines. The timeline that is provided will be compliant, and if it's extended, you'll be compliant, because really it's you have to just determine whether or not you're going to reassess and to do a new assessment, and you've already done that. So you're going to be fine. There's no deadline for you to satisfy.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
just to clarify, I'm sorry, Laura, the Planning Commission makes that determination on whether then the Planning Commission has passed a resolution stating that we need to do an update of the master plan.
Okay, so that seems to meet any legal requirements there. That's good. So really, the timeline is really what we wanted. And so I'd like to do as much as we can under COVID restrictions, but if we do have to wait and maybe once things do open up, then have an even deeper citizen engagement, maybe at that point we can do amendments, depending if the timelines has to be extended quite a bit, that we can always do more amendments later on as well. I want to make sure this is a very thorough, I know the mayor has spoken about this quite a bit as well, that we make sure there's very thorough citizen engagement and everyone feels they understand what's going on. And just me personally, another comment is this, and you did mention this in the attachment, but just a deep dive on housing and what are our goals with housing. I know Troy is a city with nearly 120, 130,000 jobs, when we're under full employment, when we're fully open, and we have nearly 120,000 people that commute into the city every day that don't live here. And so I see the benefit of having more housing here, but I just would like a clear idea of what the goals are, what types of housing, how many, something like that. I know it's hard to define that, but I think that's a big point of tension here is residents are resistant for obvious reasons when it's right next to them. And I just like some more clarity there, but otherwise, but I think you are doing that already, but that's just my personal take, but.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Very good. Councilmember Erickson Gall. Questions?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Mayor. My question is, do we need to have the census data before we can complete our community engagement? And I sort of a comment buried in my question. The latest I've heard is that our census data could be delayed as late as September of this year. And how would that impact our timeline if there's a severe delay in getting that census data.
City Manager Miller.
So I'm going to make a little joke. You have 3 certified planners here, so you're over plannerized. But since this is Ben's project, I'll turn it over to him. But certainly we can do some engagement before we have that information. But clearly we need it before we finish a draft of the document. Go ahead, Ben, if you have anything else.
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Miller. We can certainly start the engagement process. We can get pretty far along with the engagement process. We certainly wouldn't want to finalize the engagement process, and you certainly wouldn't want to adopt the plan until that census data has been released, but also allowed time for us to review it and incorporate it into the plan, because we want to make sure that every group is fairly represented in the process. And without knowing the actual numbers, we anecdotally know what some of the demographics are in the city, but we really won't know factually until we get that census data and cross-reference versus other data sources that we have. And furthermore, can cross-reference it with the community survey that we're also going to send out for review. If we realize in that community survey that we are getting a low return rate from a certain demographic group, it may cause us to go out and change our engagement strategy, where we go out and reach those targeted communities that are not being represented. So it's pretty important to have that census data, and that's why we are saying that we may want to think about a small shift in kind of the engagement until we really fully get that data and can analyze it. And again, this delay is much more significant than we first initially thought back when we put the scope together in October. So it's not trying to punt the question, but the demographic data is really important, because we're now working at this point, we're almost working off 12-year-old data.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. So Mr. Carlisle, it sounds like even after we receive the census data, we will need to continue some community engagement even after that, receiving that information.
I would say perhaps, and again, it goes back to that point about are we fully getting the engagement from the communities that maybe underrepresented in some of the earlier correspondence that we received, especially in light of if we get different data coming out of the census, if that makes sense. So if we notify that if we understand that there's a certain population that is significant within the community, but only has been a part of the engagement, has not been very well represented in the engagement process, we may want to have some additional targeted outreach to that community to get them as part of the process. So like I said, we can start it, we can get pretty far along, but we may have to add or supplement engagement based on what we receive from the data.
That makes sense.
Okay. Councilmember Abraham, and I'll come back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mayor. I am supportive of starting out with maybe more virtual community engagement. I think, despite the vaccines being out there, the rollout is still a little slower and than we'd like it to be. And there's also some variants that may offset some of the benefits to that vaccine rollout. And so while I may be returning to the office in the summer, who knows, it could be Labor Day as well for me and maybe many of the automotive sector. And so I'd rather kick off sooner rather than later. I can appreciate the difficulty in proceeding with the master plan update when you're not sure when you're going to get demographic information, which is pretty key. And I think between that and the community engagement, I think we're going to start to, potentially see some real shifts in what the community wants. And what I mean by that is that, 5 years ago when we talked about the master plan in 2016, there was a desire for smaller housing so that people could age in place and retire in the community that they had lived in. And there was a lack of housing stock there. Well, now the world is shifting to working more from home, and that shift towards working more from home may be more prevalent. We may have pivoted to a new condition in the United States and maybe around the globe, instead of going into the office, having a norm of 5 days a week, it could be 2 or 3. And some of those assumptions about housing stock, are they still valid compared to where they were 5 years ago? And they may very well be. We may still have a very strong demographic that wants to age in place here, but it will be very interesting to see how the pandemic and its impact on society and how it works, lives, and plays may impact our master plan yet. So that's probably more of a comment than a question, but Mr. Carlisle, I am supportive of what you're trying to do, given all the unknowns, and I appreciate you're laying it out as best as you can.
Thank you, Councilmember Abraham. Councilmember Chamberlain Karanga, did you have a follow-up?
Just a quick follow-up. So just wanted to clarify is I didn't realize the importance of getting this 10-year census data. So my understanding is every year when we look at our budget and we look at our figure, our population, is that there's this unofficial SEMCOG data, and that also provides the demographics that we need. But perhaps I'm mistaken. I thought there was also other forms of getting sort of that census data. But of course, we want the real census data, and we definitely need that. But I do feel we can do some form of resident engagement as we wait on that. Does that question make sense? Like, do we have other forms of also demographic data that we draw upon year? And I thought it was from SEMCOG.
City Manager Miller, it's a good question.
I'll start, and Ben, you can take it over in relation to. So yes, SEMCOG does have demographers and provides updated data, but those are projections as opposed to, quote, an official count. And the census data is a legal number. It has a lot to do with allocating boundaries, certain types of boundaries, funds from the federal government. But yes, we do rely on those demographics that are released on SEMCOG's website. And over the years, the Census Bureau can, let's just say if you have a fast-growing community or a highly changed community, they can do special reviews of communities, but I really haven't seen those since like before 2000, when the suburbs were growing at a greater clip. But primarily, you really need to list the initially near the 10-year mark, the census data, because that's the benchmark, and then all the demographers then estimate off of that. And Ben, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I was just going to echo the points that you made, is that, yeah, we do rely on a lot of SEMCOG data, but again, a lot of the SEMCOG data is based on projections from former census data. And so this is actual, the hard official U.S. government certified data that the census puts out that we will collect. And it's not just population data. It gives everything from transportation, modes of transportation to work, housing type, median housing value, racial information, so ethnicity information. So there's a lot more there than what some SEMCOG typically produces every year or every 5 years. So there's a lot to get through, and a lot that would affect and impact a master plan. If you're, within 5 years of a census, we don't, we can use that data. But since we're, almost at this point 12 years out, I think it would be prudent that we do really not wait, but really strongly evaluate the census data when it does come out, whenever it should come out.
Very good.
I would also want to make, Mr. Baker, if I can make one more point here.
Of course.
If our contract does pass tonight, we value this long-term relationship with the city. We do think that at some point every community will hate their consultant, and we're trying our best to have you not hate us as long as possible. I say that in the fact that we may be different than some other consulting firms, where they may come in and do a project and try to get in and out as quick as possible within a certain budget. We don't look at that relationship with this community. We don't look at that relationship with any of our communities. So that being said, from our standpoint, I understand that we want to try to get this done as succinctly as possible, But if it takes longer to get done, we're in it for the long haul, and we're in it for the budget that we've all agreed upon. And so we want to do this right. And so if that means we need to wait a little bit to get the proper process in place or get the proper data in place, that's certainly something that we would strongly support and encourage this council to support as well.
Thank you, Ben, for that. That makes a lot of sense. Councilmember Hoderick, you haven't said anything yet, so go ahead.
Just listening to the conversation, and actually, Mr. Carlisle essentially just answered the question or made the comment that I was thinking. You're essentially embedded with us week to week. We are living in a time, all of us, that every week or two we get a sense of what our new normal may or may not look like and when it may or may not arrive, correct? I mean, Mayor Baker was just stunned to hear about that Labor Day start for one of our employers in the city. I go from thinking I'll get my vaccination, in a couple weeks to thinking it could be July. And the truth is these are a ton of unknowns. And I guess this is maybe a question for City Manager Miller. Yes, we have directionally how we want to proceed, but would it be helpful that, a sense check comes back to us maybe the beginning of May or something where we get a read and we have a chance, if you need to finesse this timing or how we're proceeding, we have better idea when the census data is coming in. How can we help the process be nimble and yet still keep moving forward is my question. And I think because we have that strong partnership, we can do that on an ongoing basis. And I'm certainly willing to, it's a different time where we, instead of just naming a timeline and a project, and then you come back to us in 4 months or 6 months, maybe we need to just keep touching base to keep the process moving with the new normal as it comes along or the situation as it evolves. And I'm certainly willing to do that if you think that would work.
Mayor, really quick, I think in a couple months, an update would be a wise thing to do, just to indicate where we're at and make sure that City Council's on board with the direction and where we're going. Because 2-3 months, we may have a lot more clarity on the conditions out there. So make it up front and to come back in a few months and make a report.
Thank you. Mr. Carl, I think what you're hearing from us is we're chomping at the bit to get this process going because it seems like forever ago, but in 2019, there was an election when this was the big issue, the development issues, and one of the big issues, I should say. And so you're sensing our urgency to want to make sure we're moving along in this process. We've got residents and neighborhood nodes who are, wondering what's happening with development projects. And I don't have to tell you, you sit through the planning commission meetings, you know what's out there and you know what we've experienced. So I think you're seeing us want to jump on this because we met a little over a year ago in that joint meeting with planning, and you and Dick were there, and we had a great meeting about what we were going to do. And then it felt like, COVID, among other things, knocked this process off a little bit. So my personal preference is, yes, I think we should get started with some online engagement, whatever that looks like, just to get something going. If you're able to, escalate that up to more in person as it becomes potentially an option, fantastic, because I think there's nothing that is more beneficial than that in-person engagement on the issue. But the census information obviously is very important, and I've heard from a few of you tonight, we can't even look at putting together a draft plan without having updated census information, and especially if that affects community engagement. So to hear from you that which we already know, you're in this for the long haul regardless. It's not like you're trying to jam a project, get it done so you can move on to your next. Although with 80 municipalities, I don't even know how we're the most important in your life, even though I know we are. But I think we can have our cake and eat it too, is what I'm trying to say. I think we can get to go in with this community engagement that our residents need, that we need, but I think that hopefully you'll be able to plan to do, to be nimble, like you said. And if we can have all of that, I think you'll have our support, and I think it'll be a better product in the end for the community. I don't know if you need anything further from that. You heard a lot of us speak, probably longer than you expected, but We're good at that on this council. Is there anything else on that specific master plan you wanted to bring forward or talk about before we move on to the actual contract on the agenda item?
No, I certainly think I understand. I have my marching orders, and I will get back with Director Savana and Mr. Miller and come back with, we will certainly come back in the next month or two with an update as to where we are and kind of an update with progress. And so I think it's pretty clear that we want to proceed quickly and cautiously and do it in a prudent manner. And so I appreciate it. And of course, you guys are always my favorite client. So,
well, that's all we needed to hear. I mean, that right there, that answers it. So, all right. Well, I appreciate the master plan update. And again, so would someone like to move I-5? Councilmember Hamilton? I always ask and then I look down and I realize I can't see it. So go ahead, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-5, Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Award, Community Planning and Consulting Services as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain-Creighton, I will say, I think, and that we approve I-5 Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Award, Community Planning and Consulting Services as printed in the agenda packet. Any further discussion on this item? Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that, you know, the relationship that the city has had with Carlisle Wortman is long, it's been prolific, and it's been extremely beneficial. And all of that said, you know, I want to reassure our residents that this still went through all of the proper bidding processes and purchasing processes. And if there are any doubts, you know, please refer to the memo that's in the agenda packet. We reached out to, you know, nearly 500 firms and only 2 bid on it. And, you know, there were some past fail standards that had to even be met, which I suspect maybe was such a high level that maybe that scared off, or at least maybe the firms knew that they couldn't work at that level. And of the 2 bidders, you know, there is only Carlisle Wortman rose to the top. So I want to reassure our residents, we are doing all the due diligence from a bid perspective. We really do have a great partner in CWA, and that really is apparent when you look at how this was approached from a purchasing perspective. And so I will definitely be supporting and look forward to working with Mr. Carlisle and Mr. Carlisle in the future.
You took my joke, Edna. That's very good. Any other discussion? Just briefly, I wanted to echo that as well. And I mentioned it, but, you know, we did have a joint meeting back February of 2020 with the Planning Commission. And at that meeting, you know, there's been a lot of emotions about development in our city. And I know that, Ben, you get it, and you've interacted with a lot of the residents, and certainly Brent, you have as well. But I feel very, very comfortable and confident moving forward with this contract, knowing that you're still going to be there to continue that representation and being there to listen and to, you know, I used the word nimble earlier, but to be nimble again and to how you look at these concerns that come up. And of course, I'm supportive, and I appreciate all that you do for the city. And I know it hasn't been easy over the past 5 years on certain projects, especially, but you're doing your job, what you need, what we need from you, and it has been a great partnership. So I appreciate it very much. And I will call for the vote from Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Creighton?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it. And, look forward to having you back for an update on that master plan stuff soon. That concludes regular business this evening. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'd like to pull J3B. Would anyone else like to pull anything from the consent agenda this evening? Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I was going to say, point out the exact same thing, J3B.
Okay, so that said, Edna, you want to move the rest of the consent agenda?
I would love to. I'd like to move the consent agenda with the exception of J3B as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve the consent agenda as printed with the exception of J3B, which has been pulled for future consideration and discussion. Any discussion? Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to briefly mention J5, which is the Oakland County Interlocal Agreement for the Oakland County Restaurant Relief Program. The county is allocating another $3 million. Well, back in December, it allocated $3 million for cities, villages, and townships to assist restaurants. And this is a new allocation, which up to $230,000 in reimbursement funding was approved for Troy. And it will help at least 16 restaurants and help approximately 370 jobs. So I just wanted to bring light to this. No, I don't know if the restaurants have already applied or if this opens it up to them applying, but I just wanted to point out to any restaurant owners in Troy that to apply for this assistance if you need it, and it will be available after we agree to this.
Thank you. Any other discussion for the items on the consent agenda except for J3B? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion carries. All items on the consent agenda except for J3B, which has been pulled for future consideration, have been approved. Brings us to J3B. I will. I pulled it this evening for a couple of reasons. First, obviously, this evening, we know the president. Commemorated doesn't seem like the right word, but there was a ceremony regarding we've crossed the 500,000 mark for people who have passed away from COVID in this country. And obviously this proclamation that's proposed to be at the March 8th meeting speaks to that and is something I think that we as a city should take very seriously and be very, very proud of the fact that we are taking proactive steps to honor those Troy citizens that have passed away because of COVID or COVID complications. I know Cindy Stewart is here tonight and she's been working. I wanted to I wanted to first, part of this proclamation is to commemorate and celebrate the lives of those we've lost by paying our respects with white flags outside of City Hall. And I'm just wondering, Cindy, if you could speak, if it's okay with you, City Manager Miller, I call directly on Cindy, just a little bit about what the plan is for that. Obviously, we've got snow-covered ground right now, but I know that you've had some conversations with the Oakland County Public Health Department about our numbers here in Troy specifically. And I looked back over some things. It was March 27th of 2020 that we had our first loss from COVID in the city of Troy. And I remember thinking at the time, obviously it was, we were in the middle of the shutdown at that point. And it really hit home when it was somebody in one of our neighborhoods that died from COVID. And I remember, moving through the months and suddenly it was, 60 people had passed away in the city of Troy. And I remember when I told somebody that number the first time, they couldn't believe that 60 of Troy residents had passed away from COVID. And, that was, I think, during the summer. And it's affected all of us in different ways. I know Councilmember Hamilton, you've had some family members, and we've all got stories. This is particularly on my mind tonight. A good friend of mine and neighbor passed away yesterday from COVID. And, it hits home. And it's certainly, like I said, every one of the 500,000 in the country or the over 100 in the city of Troy now, they need to be remembered and thought of. But, sometimes it takes someone you know really well passing away or to be affected by COVID-19 to really realize the gravity of it. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about it, this proclamation tonight, and the importance of it, because I think it is on all of our hearts and minds. And there's Cindy, you moved on my screen. I'm sorry. So I'm going to go back over to Cindy. If you could just tell us again, obviously this proclamation, we do officially read it into the record at the next meeting, it'll need to be updated with current numbers. This was written with the numbers that you had at the time. But if you could speak a little bit about the numbers that you know from Oakland County and then the plan for City Hall, I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, Oakland County Health Department about 2 weeks ago told me there were 108 deaths among Troy residents, but then earlier this week, they told me the number is 109. I couldn't get another number today. They were very busy and they couldn't get to me. But by March 8th, I know I can get what the number. But I've ordered white flags, enough that we can, hopefully the snow later in March will melt so we can put them all on the front lawn of City Hall to honor our Troy residents. I think this is beautiful. And Oakland County Health Department said no other Oakland County community has done anything like this. So we happen to be the first one that are going to do something to honor our residents.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate the work you've done, and I know it's an awful subject to be focusing on as a project, but I appreciate you taking that on. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, did you have something specific you wanted to say? Because you mentioned that when I was pulling the item.
Oh yeah, no, I just also wanted to just recognize the magnitude of, the lives lost from COVID. And I was also just going to mention that, especially on this day, when officially we recognize as a nation that 500,000 people have lost their lives to this awful virus. And so I think it's very important. I think it's great that as a community, as a city, we are recognizing those who have been severely impacted by this virus. And also just honoring those who continue to suffer from it. As you said, in many different ways, a lot of people have had chronic health issues because of this virus. So it's something that I'm really happy that, as a city, we are really focusing on and really giving honor and support to those families.
I suppose I should, before we have any more any discussion, let me move J3B, the resolution to honor the City of Troy residents, to be officially read into the record at our next meeting, hopefully in connection with the flags being put out, weather permitting, subject, of course, to an updated numbers to be included in there. Does that make sense?
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve J3B, subject to being changed to the numbers as in the agenda packet. Further discussion, I'm sorry. It's tough to talk about, frankly. I'll be very honest, he wasn't just a neighbor, but he's been a good friend. And it's very strange because it happens very fast. And he and his wife both were positive. She had mild symptoms and he went fast and had a really rough time. So it's just amazing to me how it can affect people differently. And you just have no idea how it's going to affect you when you get it. So I guess I want to continue. When you look at these numbers from the City of Troy, please, residents of Troy, stay safe. Recognize that we hopefully are getting better and things will get better, but doesn't mean we need to not be vigilant in the meantime. Any other comments or discussion? I see that Cheryl Stewart has come on out. Looks like, I'm assuming, Cheryl, you're here for the vote. You did a switcheroo on me. Luckily, I'm pretty new. We have two Stewarts on the screen right now. So, Ms. Stewart, would you please do the vote on J3?
Yes. Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krianga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Motion carries. I'd like to take a 5-minute recess if we can, quick break, and we'll come back at 9:15. We're in recess. Next up are memorandums and future council agenda items. There are none this evening. So we move on to council referrals. We have one council referral this evening. N1 is a council referral from Councilmember Ellen Hoderick, proclamation requesting assistance from federal and state elected officials to address two issues from the modernized I-75 project. And I will turn it over to Councilmember Hoderick to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and read it into the record and move it, and we can comment after, if that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Suggested resolution, resolution number 2021-02. Whereas plans for the modernized I-75 project were announced in February 2016 by then Oakland County Executive Al Brooks Patterson to rebuild and widen I-75, the interstate highway that runs through the city of Troy. The Michigan Department of Transportation is facilitating the completion of this project, which must comply with federal guidelines. The city of Troy does not have any authority or control over the completion of this project. And whereas the I-75 highway rebuild required the removal of what was essentially a natural sound barrier of trees and brush to allow for the additional space for the construction work. And whereas, while it is understood the project includes plans for new landscape plantings, it will take years for those plantings to mature, and it is also unknown if the approved project landscaping will be effective in reducing the sound emanating from the I-75 traffic to the levels experienced prior to the commencement of the I-75 rebuild project. And whereas the Troy City Engineer has pursued and exhausted any options available to the City of Troy on behalf of its affected property owners, including but not limited to sound testing through the Michigan Department of Transportation. However, there are timing and density requirements in federal regulations that result in the denial of requests to replace and install the type of noise abatement that is logically required to ensure the modernization effort does not result in the deterioration of quality of life in the affected residential area. And whereas many residents have rightfully sounded the alarm about this issue impacting a significant section of Troy, found adjacent to I-75, from approximately Crooks to Coolidge to Beach to Adams, where the noise reverberation increased after the installation of a wall on the other side of the highway, which was the first phase of the I-75 widening project. And whereas, in addition to addressing substantial noise complaints from residents, the Troy City Council has also received a number of complaints from Troy business owners who have been detrimentally impacted by significant delays in completion of the diverging Diamond interchange at Big Beaver Road, adding months to the Big Beaver Lane closures and difficulties for the businesses located in that area. This has created an additional key area requiring attention. And whereas Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow and Michigan House Representative Padma Kupa have also been approached about these issues and are also striving to address them with a clear understanding of the impact to Troy residents and businesses. Now therefore be it resolved that the Troy City Council urges Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer to join Senator McMorrow and Representative Kupa as they work with us on behalf of the Troy constituents to address the two aforementioned areas. Be it further resolved that the Troy City Council calls upon all of our elected officials, including U.S. Senator Gary Peters, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, and U.S. Congresswoman Haley Stevens, to support our effort and to know we stand ready to work with you to seek solutions to these unintended consequences of the modernized I-75 project, and to rectify them as soon as possible, which is in the best interest of the city of Troy and its impacted residents and businesses.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve N1, council referral from Councilmember Ellen Hoderick, proclamation requesting assistance from federal and state elected officials to address two issues from the modernized I-75 project. And for discussion, I'll go back to you, Councilmember Hoderick, to go ahead and start things off.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. While I drafted this proclamation, I want to be clear that many members of the city council and our state rep and senator I know have already been working very hard on this. And my intention in bringing this referral forward was to capture that fact. We are to speak as a council as one voice of 7. This allows us to document and carefully capture what our needs are in this regard as a team. And I really want to thank, I know you, Mayor Baker, have spent a lot of time on this. Councilwoman Erickson Galt mentioned that she's been talking to residents as well. And we've even talked in during some of our council meetings when folks have called in with comment. So while I'm the one who's written it, I feel like that's about all I've done to help in the process, other than to listen carefully and to continue to try to see what it is we can do. It seems best to continue this dialogue and to really give voice as a team. I do know too, I've spoken to the offices of our elected officials. They all are aware. They've heard from our residents as well. I just think this can help bolster the discussion to help Representative Krupa in particular has really been working to try to take this forward, and this can help her in that regard. And I wanted to document and have on record on behalf of our constituents that we are hearing them, that we do understand what they're saying, and that we do hear them. So that's why I brought this forward, and I appreciate everyone giving it careful consideration.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Other members of council, comments? Or Councilmember Hamilton?
Thank you, Mayor. Yep. This isn't something that occurs very regularly with this council. We do a good job of focusing on local issues and trying to stay out of national and state politics. But when it comes to issues like this, that is under the jurisdiction of a higher level of government that we have no power over, we do have the power of a voice. And in this case, I think we'll have a very united voice here. So thank Councilmember Hoderick for bringing this up. I do think it's very important to a project that we had no say in, but also to a project we didn't have to financially contribute to as well. And I know personally, I reached out to our Congresswoman and to representatives of our senators regarding this issue. And I also recently let them know that we're going to as well. So I know they're aware, and I think this just hammers it home. I encourage residents to call them, call your representative's office, call your senator's office. It all helps. And if you're a resident within their state or within their district, they definitely listen if they want to get reelected. So I think it's always a good idea to call them, let them know, and they will listen. So thank you for this. This is an important, very important message.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick, for drafting this. I just want to be clear that our intent here, at least from my perspective, is this is a request for a dialogue. This is a request to get some movement on this issue. As you mentioned, the more local of our state representatives, Representative Krupa and Senator McMorrow, are aware of this, keenly aware of this issue, have been talking with the governor's office, have been talking with MDOT. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's about bureaucracy or whatever the situation is, but our residents are feeling stonewalled from MDOT. And they don't want a discussion of whose fault it is or whose job it is. They just want it to get moved forward so that we can hopefully find some relief for them. And so I very much appreciate drafting this resolution. And I've also reached out to some of our electeds to let them know that we're doing this. And I want to make sure that they understand that we're not finger pointing. We're not, passing the buck. We're asking for a discussion. We're asking for some creative thinking to try to come up with a resolution to a problem that apparently the federal and state traffic regulations didn't anticipate. So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt. Councilmember Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Hoderick, for bringing this forward. I'm very supportive of it. Through my daily work, I'm very well versed in the way in which highways can really wreak havoc on communities and even destroy neighborhoods. I think of Paradise Valley in Detroit, African American and Black community. And something that I've been proud of about Troy is the way in which, though we have a highway that runs right through our city, in many ways, it has just helped us thrive all the more. But right now, with this widening of the highway and those areas that you name in the proclamation that are impacted, we're seeing that that widening is actually really calling into question the well-being, the livability of these communities, and I'm sure even concern over people's, their property values. And I've always said that the strength of Troy is in its neighborhoods, and that if any neighborhood is under threat, is a threat to all of Troy. And many of us have come to council pledging to really help our neighborhoods and to keep them strong and the quality special and unique. And so that's just all the more reason why I really want to support this. And like my colleagues, I do have a meeting with the office of our Congresswoman, so do hope to and look forward to bringing this forward in that conversation. One thing I did want to ask, if there's a possibility to add to have a bit of the evidence behind this, and I am grateful to the information that did come. I know it's over 100 pages that came when I submitted that council question, but thinking that this proclamation serves as great talking points that we can take to our senior elected officials, as we're all doing. But if there's ways to pass on information that they then, their offices can use to help kind of leverage and move the case forward, just wondered if there are opportunities to have more of that information to just help us move that case forward. So this is a question for City Manager Miller. I just want to throw that out there.
Mayor and Council?
Sir, go ahead, Mark.
So I've had some discussions with Bill Hootery, our city engineer, and I believe MDOT staff is ready and willing and able to come in and talk to our council. And I know Bill is on the line, and Bill, if you have any suggestions or ideas to get that information forward, we'd be happy to hear it, because I know you have those closer relationships than I do.
Yeah, I did talk with construction staff today, Drew Buckner, and he and I have both been listed on the Nextdoor app. So from the start of this year till more recently, it slowed down, but we were taking volumes of emails and calls, and he was doing what he could to handle them on his end, and I on my end. And then the MDOT noise specialist, I've talked to him several times throughout this, because he kind of is the guy that I turn to when I have questions that I don't totally understand, because noise is not my thing. It is his, and he's very well versed at it. And he has offered, when I've talked to him, he said, we're ready to come in and talk, to explain how this works and to answer questions. And he is very empathetic. But MDOT's hands are somewhat tied by the federal regulations, and a lot of it has to do with just being consistent and being fair on these types of projects. In a wealthy area, you don't want the ability where a wealthy area could pay for things that didn't meet warrants as compared to an area that didn't have the financial ability to do it. So they also don't want to do something that could open up Pandora's box for projects that will be coming in the future. So it's a fine line they're trying to walk. Obviously, we have our interests that we would like to deal with, and I've talked with State Rep Krupa myself, and she is very passionate and adamant about this and looking for options. But yeah, we can definitely have the MDOT folks come to a regular council meeting virtually, obviously, or some other forum. I did forward Councilmember Rebecca Chamberlain Karinga's questions, and they are looking at those right now. There was a landscape meeting this morning that I attended, and the trees that are going in are going to be small. 1.5 inch to 2 inch in diameter. And then pines up 4 to 6 feet, somewhere in that range. And realistically, the reason they go with smaller plantings are because they've got less transplant shock. So they've got a much better chance of survival. Big trees are expensive, but big trees also, if you move them around, don't fare too well, especially in this type of highway environment where it's very harsh. So they're doing the landscape is more, it's about a 2-to-1 replacement. So for every tree that came down, 2 are going in, but it's obviously going to take years, 10, 15 years before they reach a sizable shape or size, and still won't be near as large as what some of the things that came down. But I can work with the manager's office on facilitating that discussion with MDOT and find a suitable date and time that would work with the members of council to have direct question and answers with MDOT. They've got good staff. They want to do the right thing, but they can definitely discuss the kind of the rules and regulations that they need to work with, not only in Troy but across the state.
Thank you, Bill. I this may not sound popular, but let me explain myself. I'm not sure necessarily of the value of having MDOT come and speak to us to answer our questions. I mean, at this point, I see us this referral is to wave our hands up and down to our other elected officials who actually have the potential to make some movement, hopefully, in something along these lines. And while we've had MDOT come and speak to us, and I've been to several meetings where the representative was there and answering questions. I don't know that that's the best use of their time or our time or city staff's time to have a bunch of council members, myself included, asking questions about this when we know that their answers are, well, we're stuck with what the federal regulations are right now. And to your point, Bill, what you just said, I mean, I think that's the issue right there. And from my perspective, this resolution, my intent behind it and supporting it is to say, city staff, you know where we stand as a council. We're speaking as one voice. We trust that you've been continuing to work on this and will continue to represent our city's best interest and our residents' best interest in further conversations with them. But I'm hesitant to have us individually get too much into the minutia of some of these things, because I don't necessarily see the value in that. It gives us maybe more information to talk to with residents, but it doesn't necessarily actually move the ball forward. I don't want us to get out of process on what the best, from an efficiency standpoint. I've also spoken with Padma or State Representative Krupa, and I've sent some messages to Senator McMorrow, and I've spoken with Congresswoman Stevens about this issue quite a bit, actually. And we all do that, but I don't think the issue is they don't know that we have these concerns and our residents have these concerns. They obviously do, especially we've all called them now and they've met with residents too. It's about them doing the work they need to do to try to maybe take things to the next level. So again, I appreciate MDOT. I'll tell you where I would like an answer from MDOT. I'd like some further clarification on what's going on with the DDI interchange and if we've had any contact with DTE and if they've been able to do their work, because I know that was the holdup. But to me, I don't need to know so much about specific plantings at this point. I don't think that's the issue, when you're saying 10 to 15 years, right? So it's about using time efficiently and everyone's resources efficiently. I'd rather them having this MDOT meeting with someone from Haley Stevens' office or the Department of Transportation that could potentially change these federal regulations, and then having that be reported back to you and you can report that back to us. Again, like I said from the beginning, maybe that's an unpopular position, but I don't know that that's the best use of anyone's time or resources at this point. Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig.
Yes, Mayor, just to clarify, I also agree. I don't think we need to have a meeting with MDOT. I just had some of those questions, especially around community engagement that MDOT did. So Bill, thank you so much for passing on those questions. As long as if there's a way to get some answers to those, that's fine. That's all I need. And I just want to say thank you so much. You have been doing an amazing job with all of this. All city staff have. So just thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilwoman Holderich, for drafting this resolution. From very early on in the Modernize I-75 project, we've been getting feedback from residents. I think it was the summer of 2016 when trees started coming down, and I'd say within a week, there were residents showing up at our council meetings asking for more information. What could we do? And since that time, city staff has gone above and beyond in trying to support our residents, understanding there was very little that the city of Troy could do just because of the nature of the project, it being a federal project administered by MDOT, but truly doing what they could to relay residents' concerns and issues to the right people. And I think, we're a bit at an impasse. There's only, not that city staff isn't happy to pass on information timely as they're getting it from MDOT, that only addresses part of the concern. The concern is that residents have made some of the biggest investments of their lives, which is their homes. And what they purchased a few years ago is not the same home that they're living in now. It's a much different condition. And while this isn't a medical situation, I always think of the first do no harm, maxim. And harm has been done to these residents through no fault of their own. And really, we're at the point where we need people in a higher position than ours to get involved, whether it's the governor, whether it's Senators Peters or Stabenow. The time is right for them to be having those conversations because they have the power to affect what regulations are in play right now or can be modified, or is there a potential for waivers to be made? Because this isn't just about Troy. If this were a neighborhood in Detroit in a predominantly Black area, I would be having the same concerns. And I hear what Mr. Hootery is saying about, wealthier neighborhoods maybe could do more things. I think this is just a matter of equity, no matter where you are. Your home is your biggest investment, no matter where you live. And we need to make sure residents, wherever they live, are protected. So I very much do support Councilwoman Hoderick, this resolution. And I'm seeking a little clarification, and I don't know if it's from City Attorney Bloom, but the resolution makes reference about calling upon our elected officials and names several of them, but it doesn't specifically say that we send this resolution to them. Do we need to amend the language to call that out specifically, or can it just be by consensus of council that we direct that the resolution goes to those, all of the members called out in the resolution?
Mayor?
City Attorney Bloom, go ahead.
Yes, assuming that this is passed tonight, which I think it probably will be, that will be accomplished, and there's no need to amend the resolution. You're certainly able to amend it if you'd like to, but certainly I think we're prepared to be sending it off tomorrow, I think.
Very good, thank you.
Are you satisfied with that, Councilmember Abraham?
I am.
Okay, all right, you heard it here. Councilmember Hoderick, I see you put your hand back up.
One of the things that has really struck me about this is I can remember Councilwoman Abraham is mentioning back in 2016, I watched what was a natural sound wall come down because I used to drive that route every single day for work, and was not surprised when residents were speaking up. the truth is there's probably residents all along I-75 here in Troy who would like to make some noise about getting a sound wall put up since this widening project has occurred. What is specific about this area is there was essentially a very wild, thick, I don't know how you would define the pre-wall to what would be needed now. There probably aren't great city engineer Bill Hootery numbers and specifics that meet the needs of regulation, if you will, that are written in. But there is a common sense logic sense to this, and a sense of fairness of these trees. This wall was taken down. It wasn't even the widening of the highway didn't even go into that area, as I understand it. And as I remember looking at it, it was so that they could do the work there for the widening. A widening, by the way, that no one in Troy was raising their hand to ask for. And if anything, I can remember my heart sinking when I heard the announcement of this widening at the State of the County that year, because I knew the impact that it was going to have. How a discussion of the nuance of this situation happens, I don't know. I'm trying to give voice to that in this referral. I do know our elected representatives understand it. I do understand that our city engineer, Bill Hootery, can speak to that. And hopefully by having even this discussion on the record, City Manager Miller, City Attorney Bloom, there's regulations, and then there's human beings needing to come together to talk about fairness in terms of what is common sense in that specific area. I'm not asking for a wall or writing a referral for a wall all the way along I-75. There wasn't one that existed before. There was a wall there. It was a natural one, and it is gone, and it needs to be replaced in a manner that doesn't take 15 to 20 to 25 years to grow. And that's what makes this different. And that's this tough stuff of regulations and government, and why people can get so frustrated with government. So, maybe through this process, by working with our elected officials, we can bust through one of those times when things just don't make sense, and make sense of it, and make something happen that is fair for that particular area of our community.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Any additional discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krianga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Ellen, for putting this out there. And thank you, Bill, for coming on and doing your thing. I know you've taken a lot of, I don't know if it's heat is the right word, but I have seen your email and phone number listed on various postings over the past several months, and I'm sure people are using them. And so thank you for handling that. I know you're handling it well on our behalf, on the city's behalf, so thank you. That concludes council referrals this evening. Next up are reports. Does anybody have any comments on the reports this evening? Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to point out O02A, which is the report on the resident engagement and priority study. Many residents have probably already seen 2,000 randomly selected voters received the first copy of our resident survey, and we've already received, as of the writing of this, as of February 16th, 403 responses, which is fantastic. As they said, a national survey, like those national surveys where they poll, who's winning the presidency race, who's bringing congressional races, only needs about 500-600 responses to have a pretty good margin of error. So having 403 responses already is phenomenal, and they're going to send another round of surveys out to get a couple hundred more responses, and then people can also go online and do the survey similar to the library survey last year. So I was really really happy to see this progress on this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the results in the next few months to see where our community wants us to go. We represent Troy voters. That's who our bosses are, and I can't wait to hear from them to see their vision for the future of our city.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. That's a good report as well. Additional comments on the reports, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up with what Councilmember Hamilton was saying on report 02A, the resident engagement, that residents can continue to complete the community survey. It doesn't close until February 28th. So residents can still go online and still complete it before that time, so we can get more feedback from everybody. So we have about 20% feedback as of right now, 20% response rate. So.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks. Councilmember Chamberlain Krianga.
Yes, just real briefly, just want to call out report 02C, the Troy Nature Center financial statements and a report. And again, I just want to thank them for all of their creativity, the way that they've pivoted during COVID, and just all their creativity with programming. And even think of this weekend, is they are doing this coming weekend, launching their annual Rent a Maple program. And just, again, grateful for all the ways they found ways to keep those traditions alive, but to do it in a safe manner during COVID. So I just thank them for that.
You should also thank them. You've been using their service. I saw you sledding over there on social media, so I know you've been loving it out by the Nature Center in the park.
We're there every week.
See some cute pictures of William especially. So anyway, additional, Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to point out report 02D and thank Kurt Bovenseep and his department for not only providing us with that very detailed assessment of how snow and ice is handled in the city, but also for the phenomenal work they did in this past snow event. I spend probably way too much time on Nextdoor, mainly so I can hear what people in my community are saying. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that the buzz was mostly about how everybody was thrilled with how well it went this time around. But there were a few questions about how it's determined, the 4-inch level for determining when there's actually plowing of the residential streets versus just some ice, dealing with ice and so forth. And then also there was some talk about the contractors. And so I'm very grateful for the information. So now I can go back and report to my community and answer some of their questions. And I just think we have an amazing DPW, and I thank you for all you do.
What, Councilmember Erickson Galt. On that, City Manager Miller, you sent an email to us earlier today about, I think it was a forwarded email from Kurt. I meant to email you back, but since I have you on the line, I think maybe a social media posting about the plan, just so that our residents know it might be a good idea. And I'm not speaking well to what it is, but my understanding is the trucks need to go back out and do some additional plowing to clear our drains and sewers, and that's going to create a little build up along some driveways, right? I think it would be nice to have the community notified somehow, if you want to speak to that.
Sounds good. And basically that's so that the water volumes can pool in the gutter pans and drain to the storm drains.
Thank you. Sorry. Additional comments on the reports this evening? All right. Next up is council comments. How about council comments? Councilmember Hamilton. There's no election, Hamilton, so it can't be about.
I know.
What do you got?
I've been going a lot first today, but I think it's appropriate for this comment. I wanted to congratulate Councilmember Rebecca Chamberlain Krianga on the 1-year anniversary of her appointment to council, which happened 52 weeks ago from today, one of 2 of her in-person meetings before a once-in-a-century pandemic hit our world within weeks of her appointment. But I'm incredibly grateful for the perspective. I'm pretty proud of the vote I made to appoint you to council, and grateful for the perspective you brought here. Your nonprofit experience, the experience of your PhD, you hit the ground running in extremely trying and difficult times, and you've done a fantastic job. And I'm grateful to have you on council, and congratulations. You're no longer a freshman. You're now in your sophomore year. And so I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Very good. Thank you for that. Councilmember Chamberlain-Carranga.
I'll just thank Councilmember Hamilton. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're right. I'm almost at the 1-year anniversary. So I appreciate those comments, and it means the world to me. Little did I know that I would be signing up for something in the midst of a pandemic, but it's been a complete joy. And I did have council comments. So something that came to me actually relates to the pandemic. And I did want to go back to the J item with the proclamation. And again, just thank Community Affairs Director Cindy Stewart. I'm sure Mayor Baker and Mayor Pro Tem Brooks, you all had a part in that. And just, I'm very proud that we're doing that. It's very, very important. And also, just in light of, I know Mayor Baker, you had a comment or a surprise about when I mentioned a return to the office date. And so it just made me think of a comment I just wanted to share, and also just a moment to stop and thank, again, to remember our essential and frontline workers. Remember those who don't have a choice. They have to go in, and they are in the offices. And I thank them. And I especially call out our educators, many of whom who are back in the schools. And I thank them as well, the way in which they're on the front lines. And just want to share a second about just what I'm experiencing with the delays. And I think the way in which it's been kind of very timely to be on council during the pandemic. In my own organization, I've had the honor to serve on a pandemic task force. And our job, first of all, was getting folks out of the office and getting them equipped. And now it's getting folks back into the office. And our delay in our return to the office was just announced. It was very recent. And it's partly due to, of course, delays in the vaccine, as well as new variants. But a big part of it is the hard work it takes to bring back people into an office. And so I just want to call out and just thank all those organizations out there that are doing that strategy work. It is tons and tons of work of figuring out how to get people back into an office and under a new norm. There's new policies you have to implement, new practices, just across the gamut. And as well, I'm very proud in our organization that we're putting our values, one of which is equity, front and center. And literally in every part of our strategizing and planning, we're asking the equity question and recognizing that we have colleagues, many of whom from communities, our Black communities, that have been devastated by the pandemic. There's an exhibit in the Wright Museum talking about that. And so wanting to be, as we think about when we return and how we return, just recognizing the diversity of our own workplace and the diversity of experiences with COVID and all of that. And I know all of our workplaces in Troy are wrestling with that. So I just, again, want to thank all of those who are working on that, because I know it's a lot of work. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain-Carranga. It's good perspective for sure. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to also congratulate Councilmember Chamberlain-Carranga. I'm like, oh, I want to say Rebecca, but I don't want to. But anyways, on your 1-year anniversary, it's wonderful having you on council. And I cannot believe it's been a year because it's gone by incredibly quickly. I also wanted to mention that this Thursday on the 25th from 6 to 7, we will have a Black History Month panel discussion. So you can find that on our YouTube channel. And I think it's going to be a wonderful discussion. So I would love for everyone to kind of join in and watch and participate as best they can.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks. What she didn't say is that she's the moderator and a panelist also. So it'd be very, very happy to have her part of that. And actually, Dr. Phyllis Meadows from Kresge is also one of the panelists. And Cornelius, is it right? I think it's Cornelius Wright, the new, from the Troy School District.
Yes, he's the DEI for the Troy School District.
Yeah, the Troy School District. So it's a very good panel, and I'm excited that Global Troy and the City of Troy together are bringing that for our community. So looking forward Or
It's
staff?
Godfrey, Cornelius Godfrey.
Godfrey, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry, yeah. It kind of
Cornelius,
slipped my
if
mind.
you're watching, which I'm sure you're not, I apologize. Additional council comments? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that we have a new Troy Library Director and to welcome Emily Dumas to our wonderful Troy Public Library. I think it's going to be really exciting for her to, as the new funding kicks in and we're able to make some changes. I'm looking forward to what Ms. Dumas will do with our library, and I encourage people to go to the Troy Library website and learn about our new director.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt. Additional council comments? Anybody? Council commented a lot tonight. I just have a quick, I actually, I had a phone conversation with City Manager Miller over the weekend and about an issue, and I just wanted to bring it in front of council just to seek consensus on something. I had asked Mark about what the city's maternity and or paternity leave policies are for city employees. And before city management goes off and does any reporting to us, I just want to make sure there's consensus from council that that's something you'd be interested in hearing about. It's obviously an issue that comes up a lot. There's been some social media about it from one of our representatives, and I just was curious about it. I think it's always something we want to look at from a city perspective, to be competitive, to get good talent, and to keep good talent. And also, I just want to know where we're at with it. So I talked to City Manager Miller, and he said he didn't see a problem with looking into that, but I did want to bring it in front of all of you to make sure we're on the same page. So I think that'll be good information for us to look at. See lots of nodding heads and thumbs, so that's good. I think that's all I have for council comments this evening, other than to continue to stay safe. And as Councilmember Chamberlain-Kananga thanked our essential workers, they are unbelievable to me, what they're doing. And that covers many different types of employees in our city. And, and we have city employees who are essential workers. We also obviously have a major hospital with healthcare heroes. And I just thank all of you, and we'll continue to thank all of you, and hope our residents recognize how lucky we are to have such dedicated and hardworking people on our behalf. So there's nothing else. There's no closed session this evening. We will officially adjourn. Good night, everybody.